Right.
Okay. See the attendees stream in. Hi, thank you for joining us on a Sunday. Okay, great. We have like 20 attendees so far. It's not in a while, but just really glad that everyone's joining us on a Sunday. We're going to try not to talk about the financial jargon so we don't overload our brains on a Sunday morning. Okay, great. I think we can start the session now. So for those of you who have joined us for today's session, it's essentially about the mindset and your relationship that you have with money, less so about the financial jargon. We're not going to talk about ETFs or stocks or the latest property cooling measures today, but it's more about how we place the value that we have on our money. And, in order to understand how we can improve our financial well-being, I think we first need to understand our relationship with money. In my line of work, I've interviewed several financial advisors. A lot of them have actually told me that even though they have started, a really good plan for their clients, and the clients are on track to actually saving a substantial amount of money that they have for their goal, when they come across some some emotional trigger, or they might not be aware of whatever thing might trigger their veering off the financial track. Then they start to spend impulsively, and suddenly, they are aligned or misaligned from their goal. So a lot of the financial advisors actually tell me that it's good for the individual to actually understand where these emotional triggers come from when it comes to money, because a lot of our relationship with money actually starts from very young. When we're brought up by our parents, we see them spend money, we see how they deal with money, and that in turn influences how we deal with money. So I think in today's session, that's what we're going to cover. I think the conversation around personal finance in Singapore tends to be very masculine, so I'm very glad that it's an all-female panel today. Hopefully that will add a little bit of nuance into the conversation. With me, I have Evie, who is the head of financial planning and personal investing at DBS Bank. Evie has a very interesting personal story, which also relates to money, her upbringing and all that. I'll let her share a little bit later. And we also have Fitria, who is otherwise known as MoneyMakcik on Instagram and TikTok. She has very interesting anecdotes, one of which I really enjoyed is her explanation of arbitrage. So when I was doing my research on arbitrage, or rather on Fitria, I learned what arbitrage was, which is basically the simultaneous buying and selling of the same assets in different markets to profit from unequal prices. So Fitria's example of arbitrage was saying how Fatima uses the arbitrage technique when she goes to JB and buys tudungs for 30 ringgit and sells it to her friends at 30 Sing dollars. So I thought that was a super fascinating and very relatable anecdote for a very complex financial jargon term. Without further ado, I think I will let our panelists describe themselves and basically tell us why this topic is so important to you, why you came on board the panel today. Maybe Fitra, you can start.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Fitria. I've actually been in the financial services industry for more than 12 years. And I think like what Grace mentioned, like throughout my entire career, I've seen many clients who make decisions really a lot based on emotions. And let's not talk about clients, even for myself as well. So throughout the entire career, or even my own personal life, I have my ups and downs. I have moments where in the past that, when your bank account is less than $20 and you cannot withdraw a certain amount of money. And I'm also in a situation where I'm very blessed financially. So I've been in the two different extreme spectrum of financial well-being or unwell-being. And that's the reason why as these experiences builds up, I do understand the importance of emotions and how our mental state can affect our financial decisions, or even our financial situation can affect our mental state. So that's why I'm very passionate about this topic today. So yep, that's me. I think Evie, we will love to hear from Evie as well.
Thanks, Fitria, and thanks, Grace, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm Evie. I run financial planning and personal investing for the bank. I've been in the financial industry slightly longer than Fitria, like about now 18 years, almost 20 years. And for me, I think why this topic is very close to my heart. I grew up in I would say like an upper middle class family. So I, just like Fitria, when I was growing up, my parents, usually just like every Asian parents, they would really want to do well and, you know, make sacrifices for their kids, and so that the kids will have a better life after. And of course, this better life, I think, you know, everybody has an interpretation of what does that mean. But when I entered my adulthood and started work, my family went through some very unexpected financial crisis. So the first, I think 3-4 years of my career, I live basically paycheck to paycheck. So I think from a time where I could party every day and I could enjoy my life to, you know, every cent started to count, and I have to decide what to eat at every meal. And then coming out from it through hard-earned, basically dedication to my career and making something out of my job. That experience taught me many things. And actually, when I was preparing for this and I look back, I really realized that, you know, how the whole circumstances that I went through affected my view, not just about money, to Grace's point, like even my entire approach towards life and risk taking. And so I guess this morning it would be a good session for me to share, you know, some of these learnings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you. So to kick off the conversation, I think let's frame it around what the conversation currently about personal finance is in Singapore. I think it focuses a lot on strategies and tactics, you know, to improve your wealth. Also focuses on a lot of what you should buy, what you shouldn't buy. But I think managing money requires and managing money is different from having money, right? I think that's something that we all agree on here. So managing money actually requires to look at how we relate to money, our relationship to money. Can the two of you kind of explain why is it important to understand our relationship with money before even talking about improving our financial well-being and health?
All right. Okay. I can start. For me, right, I think I'll always simplify the things that money can do for us, which is, I think, the 4 things. Money can give us freedom. Money gives some people a sense of security. Money gives some people a sense of how do I say, confidence. All right. And then the last thing is power. Okay, so to understand which, of course, I think everyone can have a bit of everything. But for example, for myself, money equates to freedom. Right? For else, my husband, money equates to security. So I'd rather be insecure, but I need the freedom. Where else he rather have no freedom but needs the security. All right. Some people need power. Some people feel that when I have money, my confidence level is higher. All right. So to understand what money does for us in our own personal identity is very important, because this leads to a lot of decisions making that we make with regards to our money. Like, wow, how much to save, how much to invest, how much are we spending? Why are we spending? Why am I shopping whenever I'm sad, for example? Because it gives me the freedom to do so, right? Why people save money a lot. Why people can save more, some can't save at all. So it all boils down to identity. And I think this is the core reason. Once a person understands where the money is coming from or why the money is for, it makes it a little bit easier with regards to financial planning and wealth management. Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree with Fitria. I would add on, I think the other part about whether it's a sense of security or what money empowers a person to do. I think everyone would like to be in some form of position where you are free from that kind of worry. And I think getting to that baseline is important. And I would say one of the things about relationship with money that I've learned is to have as an open conversation as possible with the people that either financially depend on you, or you are providing for, or you feel even if you're not providing for, but maybe you feel responsible for, right? So in my case, my parents and the people related to me, I feel responsible for them and their well-being. So that part, to have these open conversations, which I find it very hard to have in our community, that's actually very important. And ironically, in order to have these open conversations, you need to treat money almost like a more objective thing, rather than usually money is very related to emotions, right? People, when it comes to money, people tend to forget, all their value systems, and they are, thinking, and they can say, oh no, I'm very generous. But when it comes to certain, for example, if you are very desperate for money, you can be very generous, but at the time when you're very desperate, many things can change. So this part of before that we ever have to reach this desperate situation, I find that ideally, where and when possible, it's good to set aside time to have open conversations with your loved ones and talk about money openly without the number itself, like the approach towards money, like what Fitria has rightfully said.
Yeah, you're both right. I think money is a very emotional thing, and even though it's all numbers and it seems like a very tangible thing, but all the decisions around money are very emotionally driven. And I think the sooner we realize it, the easier it is for us as well. So, I mean, on that note, right, because when we're talking about all these, possible triggers that could happen around money and that could derail our financial planning, can you explain the concept of financial wounds? I think this concept of financial wounds basically stems from some sort of financial trauma that you may have experienced in your younger years or in your childhood that kind of influences the way you spend or think about money today. It could be a small trauma, basically maybe just like your parents telling you, oh, you can't buy this particular toy because we don't have enough money. Or it could be huge trauma like your parents had to pull you out of school because you're going through some kind of retrenchment in your family. But can you explain how this concept of financial wounds persists to adulthood or even late adulthood, and how they can actually impact our entire financial planning or financial well-being?
Yeah. So I can start first. As I was saying earlier, when I first started out in my career, and perhaps I think everything that I devoted to my career in the first decade was really around getting out of financial hardship and nothing else. If I was, I was sharing with Grace earlier, if I'm perfectly honest with myself, that was the only thing that drove me at that time. I mean, because you were paying debts all the time, so then there was nothing else you could think of. And what I think many years later I come to realize is that it's not just I didn't just became like worried about money. I became worried about everything else. So when we talk about financial wounds, it lasts beyond just the mindset towards money. It also, I realized that I became very risk adverse towards anything uncertain. So when I feel I have no control over my lives, or the outcomes of my lives, I tend to either run away, or I just don't want to talk to anybody. I become very, unruly in that sense in my thinking and my approach towards my own life and my career. So I come to realize that this financial wounds is not just a one-time thing. It doesn't just affect your money, it actually affects your life. And because everything is integrated. So if, for example, if we take no risk at all in our lives, even with money, no change, then you can't even grow your career, for example. You can't adapt to changing circumstances, or you reject people's generosity and hospitality towards us. So I do think actually coming out of it, that there is also a point that you have to realize and try to get out of the situation and get out of this so-called financial wounds and impact, and recognize it and then try to take active steps to deal with it. Yeah, and that definitely requires more than financial planning and financial tools. That requires really that managing your emotional and mental well-being as well.
All right. For me, a bit similar to Evie, where I think a lot of my financial trauma begins when I started working. So when I was younger, I'm a bit more protected, as in I come from a lower middle income family, but I think my family generally don't really share about their struggles until I started earning money, and then I realized there's a huge can of worms that I just opened. So I started off, understanding that, I realized that my parents couldn't pay for the HDB, and then I started paying for the HDB, etc. And it made me realize that sometimes you really need to plan for a very long term, because initially when they bought a house, it's more towards a big house, nice big family, but they didn't really realize that what happens when the interest rate did rise for a certain period of time in the past, and also what happens when their income got lowered, when CPF amount of CPF money gets lesser, or as they get older, and it impacted, of course, the children. And at the time being was me, and still me, because my brother and I has an 11-year age gap, so I'm like the third parent for him. And it gets a little bit more challenging when my parents both are diagnosed with cancer, one after the other. I mean, bless them, they are both passed away. But during that period of time, I think there were a lot of emotions that makes me trigger about making financial decisions. All right, it can be at both extremes, where I need to save a lot of money because I don't know when will they need it, right? Thank God they have insurance, but still that insecurity, I have no idea, right? I need to spend a lot of money because it seems that life is very short. So it was a very two extreme thing, and that made me realize that At that point of time, whenever everything is done, when everything is settled, I realized how emotional I was. All right. And there was no in between. And that was a very, very scary moment. That's why if considered what money does for me, I think it's more towards freedom. The freedom, the ability to retire my parents, even for a short while before they pass on. Right. The ability to take a pause from work, to take care of them, when doctors say that they only have a few weeks to live, that kind of thing. So money is more for choices. And that's where I realized that whatever decisions I made in the past was truly based on emotions. And I hope that is not out, that comes out of it, even to my son. I hope he doesn't have to make these kind of emotional decisions in the future. That's where my husband and I start planning, most importantly, for ourselves, so that anything he can take care of himself, at least for as a parents for both of us. Yep.
Yeah.
So this was a financial wound that I'm still healing, but I'm much better after realizing what happened, because my mother just passed away 2 months ago, actually.
Oh, sorry to
So these
hear
are the
that.
emotional healings that I have for financial wounds, rather.
Yeah, I mean, just now you were saying, Fitria, about money can relate to so many things like freedom,
Yep.
power, control. And I
Yes.
was just thinking that I think for me, money is about control. Because I mean, my parents were divorced when I was 9, and I think money is a way for me to kind of regain control over my life. And it has always been that way since then. It's just that I never realized it until I sat in therapy and really unpacked my scarcity mindset around money. So like even spending on, like, say previously like a $5 bubble tea, right? I would just feel like, oh shit, I'm going to sink into poverty, which is very unrealistic. But to me, it's like, okay, I can't spend unnecessarily because I never know when my life is going to be uprooted and upended all over again. So that was the financial trauma that I had to that I had to overcome. And now at least I think I'm a bit better. When I spend on, say, like a $30 random Uniqlo top, I don't feel anxiety anymore. I used to feel that way. But it's just a lot of financial trauma basically is rooted in things that are not money related also. Which to Evie's point, money affects every aspect of your life, really, or basically your thought about money. So I think when we finally kind of come to terms with our financial trauma and deal with it or reconcile it, I think we can move into dealing with money or using our values to kind of shape our financial planning and our future for finances. Can you share a little bit about how you work with clients, or whether your own personal values come into play when it comes to financial well-being, and how values might be a huge part of financial well-being?
All right. Okay, I can start first. For me, I think there are two values that I work towards with. I work with, rather. One is a scarcity mindset, and one is abundance mindset. It's hard to say which is better, which is worse. But I'll say that why some people have a more scarcity mindset and why most people have abundance mindset. It can be due to upbringing. It doesn't matter that whether the person was from a well-to-do family or was from a less fortunate family. All right. So when I work with my clients, usually when they talk about fit, I can't work with the budget I'm having. All right. We need to see whether it is an expenses issue or an income issue. Because many times people say, I can't save. And there are times where they really can't save, right? Because their parents need money. They're helping their parents and their kids. How can they save with that amount of money, right? So next we talk about income. So people just talk about finances. I need to save more money, right? But in hindsight, how many people have thought that I need to earn more money? All right. I've heard of people who juggle 7 jobs just to get their parents going. All right. I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but it is more of a mindset towards abundance. Like, things can be done. All right. There is a way. Sometimes cutting down expenses may not be the only solution, because cutting down expenses also leads us to giving up a certain form of emotions. Right? For example, if you ask me to cut food, right? If you ask me to eat lesser, I may be sadder. I mean, my happiness index is equal to my weight, right? And that can be also one of the main reasons why it's hard for people to feel, I can't save money. So sometimes I'll ask my clients, like, how about, have you considered earning a little bit more? Either you go ask your boss for a pay raise, in exchange for some other expertise or time, or you find a second income, all right, in some ways or another. Because that usually, when they have more money, they earn more money, hopefully their confidence level and their identity also shapes them. Like, oh, I think I'm worth this much, rather than, oh, I can only spend this much. So that's how I do financial planning for my clients in general, because I do mainly a lot of one-to-ones, ranges from lower income as well as to a higher net worth. And you can see that these are two, it's not because of their net worth, it's just because of their mindset, right? About how they can get more, find more. Because in a nutshell, people say that they print money. Yeah, people do print money. It's not that we don't print money, but the economy, the markets does print money. So money is not if I have more, you have less. It is where can you find more out of it. So that's more of the abundance mindset that I always hope that my clients can adopt, and give them more positivity and hope in life about their finances. So that's for myself. How about you, Evie?
Yeah, thanks, Fitria. Quite very close. I would say the other thing that I really talk to people about very openly is this thing about refraining from judgment, which I think you spoke about as well. So I think our society tends to put a lot of judgment into everything, like the role, what the role is worth, or the job, what is it worth, to your point, right? So how people would like to earn more, whether it's through, the discovery of their talent, featuring their talent, what they are very good at, things that I think in the last 2 years during COVID lockdown, many people discovered that, they could earn money in ways that no one could ever even thought of, right? And so I think in a midst of even hardship, which what I wanted to talk about is also resiliency. So in a human spirit, our ability to survive and thrive and adapt, there is in making money, preserving money, growing money is the same. This application of, the fact that it's even if you're poor, it's never going to be forever. Even if it's sufficient, it's never going to be forever. Even you have abundance, it also never is going to be forever. So this part about the fact that things are transient, so we need to be resilient about money, and our mindset towards how we approach money. And then as well as this part about, I feel we should not judge whether we are very well off today, we are less well off, or our family and friends are going through financial difficulties, coping with circumstances that they didn't prepare for. If we refrain from judgment, people would be able to, I feel, change their mindset towards how they approach their financial well-being. So usually when I listen to people going through challenges, the first thing I will ask them is, what do you think of your situation? Do you think you can get out of it? And how do you think, and what help do you need to get out of it? And exactly like what you said, sometimes the help that they need is not about money at all, right? It's about something else altogether. And I find that usually if we don't judge and we have a lot of more empathy standing on the other person's side, the person naturally know how to get out of it. And I think just like the part that, you want to teach people to fish instead of feeding them directly, helping people get through the cycles of ups and downs in their financial challenges or overcoming these financial challenges is actually a life lesson for all of us.
Yeah, you're so right. And I think judgment actually, as in judgment from external parties, might actually make the person themselves judge themselves even worse, which then kind of like pushes them further into the hole of lack of finances. And especially I think during COVID, right, when so many people lost their jobs and all that, I think there was a lot of or even greater shame that was around money and job security and job titles and all that. But already I think even pre-COVID, shame and status and like power and money, they're all very intertwined in society. And I mean, as such, and I think that's why a lot of us don't really talk about money. So we're always a little bit ashamed to talk about how much we earn, because we don't know whether we're earning more than what our peers are earning, or maybe even less. Maybe we're underselling ourselves. Yeah, but there's just this taboo basically to talk about one's salary, for example. And I think such taboos actually result in very not so transparent conversations in the personal finance space. And that's why you have people dishing out advice that seems to be a cookie cutter advice that anyone can apply, but because we don't openly talk about how context and our own environment and personal situation affects how we think about money, that's why we have all these people saying, oh, should I buy stocks or should I buy this latest like crypto coin or whatever? But like, if your financial situation and your general financial habits don't are not aligned with that sort of thing, and you basically can't even get through a bank brochure without being confused, then obviously you shouldn't buy these things. But because all these advice that we have right in the personal finance space in Singapore are so template and very textbook, so I think that's why people tend to just think that, oh, well, it's like a one size fits all, but it's not. So maybe let's talk a little bit about how we can navigate cultural taboos around finance in Singapore, whether it's shame within your own family or within a more traditional setting. Yeah, how have you guys personally helped, whether it's your clients or yourself or your friends even, to navigate these things, or even in your own personal life? Have you been a little bit more open about your own finances in order to walk the talk?
Yeah, I can start first. I would say that a few things. all the content and all of the tools and all the hard stuff that has been created as a result of technology, the fact that knowledge is now democratized, I think people should genuinely leverage them to find out, as a matter of fact, to Grace's point, right? If I want to take a risk on crypto because my best friend tells me to do so, then do I really want to do it? What does it mean to my finances in the short and long term? So I think people should take advantage of it and equip themselves with those tools. With DBS also does a lot of, we try to do as much as possible in our way of bringing financial inclusion to everyone. But basically, I think that is one aspect, and people should do the hard stuff. I think in terms of the softer stuff, some rules I create even around for my own family is, if you want to buy a financial product, please explain it in like three sentences. And if you can explain it, that means like, what are you really buying? What is the risk that you're taking? And do you have appetite to lose the risk? Or what are you getting out of it? You can explain it in simple English, no financial jargons. By all means, please, take your first step. And I think some things we also caution is like the emotion part, especially like now market is very volatile. Then people feel, oh my God, I need to pull it out, or I no longer want to service my insurance, which is a very dangerous thing, because if something happened and you have no insurance premium, then you have to fork out your own money from your own pocket. So these things, because of the external influence, people tend to react emotionally and very, very haphazardly, I would say, towards money decisions. So that I think we need to be careful of. And actually, I would say also, because we tend to react emotionally, it's good to have someone, in my case, my husband is not in the financial industry, so then he is like a checker. I will tell him, hey, I want to do something like this. And then because he knows nothing about what I'm doing, it sort of becomes like a check, like the decisions that I'm taking meant well for everyone and not just myself, and not just because I'm reacting towards something. And that serves, I think, as an opportunity to have an open conversation. And maybe Fitria can also allude to this, but I think when families go through a lot of financial challenges, in hindsight, we will always say we could have just been very open about, financial matters before it was too late. So now that I have gone through it with my family, we are able to have these discussions, no matter how morbid, even during Chinese New Year, because my family is all living apart. So the only time we are together is Chinese New Year, and for Chinese family, to speak about these things are very taboo, especially during Chinese New Year. But we make it a point now that, because that is the only time we are face to face, that we can have a calm, collected, and adult conversation about money, whether it's passing on a legacy, whether it's about paying a debt, or helping with medical expenses, being responsible for the parents, and so on. So I think these kind of experience help us make it a point that we must talk about it.
I think I agree with you, Evie. Communication is one of the hardest things to do when it comes to finances. Basically, maybe because of our own fear of being judged by our own family members, in fact. I think it's a taboo in many cultures, similarly in mine as well. Also in my family, I think like I mentioned, the can of worms was open when I started earning. Maybe because by then they realized that only then they can talk about money because I'm earning. Before that, they don't want me to be worried, etc. Right? So it was a lot of 20 years of problems that that was just surfaced after 1 to 2 years of working. All right. I mean, recently also I had very, very difficult conversations with my brother based on the legacy that my parents passed on, and that was not an easy conversation. It was one of the most difficult conversations in the midst of a very emotional time. Right. But I'm very glad that we fight through it. At least we had a very open communication with it, and now whatever decisions we make are much more easier. Can just communicate in one text, all right, because we know what we are doing. We know what our intentions are now and in the future, and vice versa. But speaking of like judgment, I think one of the most scariest emotions or judgment that people have now is the feeling of FOMO-ness, as much as we scroll TikTok, we scroll Instagram, we scroll any social media, people are doing things, right? People are investing, or people are spending. I don't know what am I to do. Am I supposed to invest now all? Because they say you invest now all, right up for 2 years, you'll be okay. Then you see people, wow, how come they're spending a lot of money now, because etc. So this FOMO-ness, right, leads all to a lot of maybe not so ideal financial decisions. Even when it comes to like investment or buying insurance, if they do it out of FOMO, it might not be the best way. You might buy too much. You might take too much risk, like what Evie was mentioning. You might not understand what you're undertaking, all right? And you may be also due to greed, because you want to achieve the same lifestyle that you have been seeing out on social media. So I think that is one of the main concerns or main worries, right, that I have even for my own and also the future generations, because we are just so easily impressed, right, by a 3-second video or a 3-second photo that we look into, and we end up judging everything based on that very small moment of ours as we scroll on our phone. So yeah, that's my stake, on the taboo and why people don't really talk about finances, because we judge too quickly, we view too quickly, and we make decisions in a whim.
Yeah, that's true. And I actually think like all this taboo and shame definitely goes back to, generations. I mean, it's basically generational trauma passed down as well. So on that note, right, we have a Q&A from one of our attendees who actually asked, how can they teach their parents to have a healthy relationship with money? So I think in answering this question, maybe you guys can also share some strategies around mindset that you have implemented, personally in your own life to improve your financial well-being, and how, someone can talk to maybe the elderly parents or just an elderly relative, someone that you care about, and help other person have a healthy relationship with money.
Yeah, so I can share some experiences we have. Actually, because we are working also around retirement planning and trying to figure out how to, help people become more financially independent and sufficient during the time when their regular income is no longer there. And actually, I think one of the things that most people in the older generation feel is that they underestimate a lot of expenses. I mean, even let's say myself today, if I think of retirement, I'll say, oh, don't worry, by the time I retire, I will not this like 2,000 of these things, and I can like live with bare minimal and eat rice every day, and that's the end of it, right? I don't really need to. Yeah, so people have this underestimation of what it means to retire. And a few things, also the underestimation, a lot of it is around medical concerns and medical care. And a lot of, especially in countries in Asia, where people are also very reliant on government to provide that part of it. So that underestimation unknowingly and unintentionally becomes a burden to the next generation. So what we call today a sandwich class generation, where they are supporting both sides of the generation. So I think what we really do is to really, in that sense, this is when tools, numbers, and hard stuff help a family to be able to sit down and talk about it and use the tools to guide rather than have this conversation, hey, you got more money and I got less money, and you got more kids and I got less this, blah, 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 is to really present the facts and be able to speak about it more objectively. And seeking, I think today, even in healthcare, there are support system that provides actual facts on how much things would cost, what are the trade-offs that's required, whether you need, full assistance, half assistance, some assistance, and the choices that they want to make. And I would say the other thing about parents and elderly is it's also important that I myself have, my father is also very ill at the moment. So like the thing is to make sure that they have no regrets. Yeah, so I think a lot, I have this very a friend who is in this active aging society who once told me that it is important that they live with no regrets, and important for them to understand what is the trade-off that they are making. So many elderly people will say, oh, I don't need to buy insurance, or I don't need all of these things, because when the day comes of this diagnosis, I just prefer to die. But what they don't think of is the pain and suffering in the process of dying as well. And that causes a lot of pain for the next generation who feel, so if I'm a daughter and I can't do my best for my father and he's in pain all the time till the day he passed on, then I will live with regret. So that regret becomes not, the mindset and trauma is not on them, it will become the next generation's problem. So that's, I think, to explain it that way would be the easiest. And I'll leave you one final example of how I told my father. So my dad needs dialysis now, and it's 3 times a week. And when he first started, he was like, oh, I'll just go to like whatever, like the cheapest and the most, efficient, because I want to do all these other things. But I had my parents, oh, sorry, before I forget, my parents are in Malaysia. So they live in a very small town. So when I first heard of it and my mom told me about it, I was like, okay, I would like to know what are the, what kind of hygiene practices, for example, this clinic or this support center would have, and this dialysis center, I'd like to understand a little bit more. But from my father's point of view, he's like, I don't want to waste your money. Your money is all hard earned and I don't want to waste it. So it's okay. I'm very old and I'm prepared to, die. That's the thinking that he had but I told him exactly what I just said. I was like, I can't live with myself, right? If there is a treatment and if money in that sense, to Fitria's point, can make your life better, then why give it up, right? Then all of us, the next generation, will live with the regrets that come later. So I think for that usually when something like this happens, this is when I feel you can talk about it. And talk about it in a way that you care about that person. I think that is easier to, I won't say totally offset, but at least offset some parts of the concerns about money and the attachment towards money and materials. Yeah, that would be what I would share.
Oh, all right,
Yeah.
nice. For myself, I think for parents, I don't know. In the first place, in the past, I find it really hard for me to change their mindset because they have been living much longer than me. I don't know what they go through when they were younger. So it was very, very difficult. So what I did was, I think, what helps is, I give them basically whatever emotions that they feel. I lump it out to one reason, which is insecurity or security. So I'll try my best to provide them with a sense of security. And when they feel secured, it's not about how much money they need. It's just giving them enough to feel secure, making them not worry about us. And then that's where they feel a bit better. And I do
Oops, I think Fitria is.
agree with Evie about regrets. I think one thing about for me, it is also the regrets on my side, to provide them with the best of my ability before anything happened. So I think the regrets goes to both ways. And then many times that the parents are also focused on themselves, like, wow, I can just pass on, but they don't know how the children feel about it. So I think what they need is also a sense of security that if I can have this, leeway within, if I do this, I will be okay. My children will be okay. It's not about whether I have it my way or you have it your way.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
challenges our parents and the mindset, not the easiest thing that I've ever gone through.
I totally agree.
That's right. And I think on the flip side, another attendee also asked, so how can we then explain the importance of financial well-being to our kids? And I mean, personally, I'll just share from an example. So my parents, I think from young, they were very financially prudent, which I think also contributed to my scarcity mindset. But I mean, the flip side of having a scarcity mindset is that you're super financially prudent, right? So my mom, she would say like, okay, if we can walk another 1 km to another NTUC and save like 20 cents on this like random Campbell soup, then let's do that. And then my dad, sometimes when he walks by the lift landing, he will see like all these books and like sofas that are still perfectly in good condition. So he'd be like, oh, can we just take it home and like refurbish it and stuff like that. So I think the best way really to teach your kids the importance of financial well-being is through walking the talk. Just be a role model. I think that's I wouldn't say it's the best way, but it's the easiest and first way, basically. Yeah, to actually be a role model to your kids, show them what exactly financial well-being means to you. And I think kids basically are very impressionable, so they will model after the parents' of behavior in some way or another. Yeah. What about you guys? Share some advice.
I think for myself, because my son has two very opposite parents. My husband is just like how you and your parents were. If we could walk a distance to save the parking, he will. You know what I mean? But for me, it's we earn this money to make our choices to walk lesser. So it's a very two extreme thing, right? And what I think about this is, I think kids need to understand that either way, we have to pause and make financial decisions. We have to understand that which one is more worth it for us, which one matters most to you. All right. Example, if I was limping, I don't think walking that makes sense. But if I'm healthy and I think I can save some money, let's do it. So it is not an easy situation for kids to understand as they are young, but I totally agree with Grace. As we walk the talk, they will definitely get a little bit of our characteristics. So my son is all about, okay, let's not take cab because it's expensive, let's take MRT. All right, let's not take car because it's expensive, and let's just take MRT. And our car is not in use because he just wants to take MRT. You know what I mean? So that is the little things that children have that I think luxury doesn't equals to money. It is all about financial well-being. Happiness doesn't have to equate to how much money we have, but in fact about the experience that we provide. Because I think children are impressionable in a way that what does this experience mean to them? How does this experience bring them emotionally? So if you keep buying gifts to him, like I have money, I have gifts makes me happy. And that gives a lot of future problems that we don't hope to have. But instead of what can this experience, what can this choice and kind of experience it brings to us, and then they will relate experience to joy rather than money equals to happiness equals to joy. Yeah, so that's for me.
Yeah, I don't have kids of my own, but I will add where I do mentoring outside and support the community. In the example that Fitria rightfully pointed out, I think a lot of it is inculcating young kids with the mindset of making trade-offs and sacrifices. Knowing that you give up one thing, then you can gain another, or you gain something else and you make effort for it. I think that kind of mindset is more important than just money itself. I mean, when you're younger, it's very hard to understand $1,000 is too much, too little, 100 is too little. These things, it's just numbers until, you have to earn and do all of that on your own. But then I think it is important to have this, if a parent decide to buy you something, and then what was, the sacrifice or the trade-off that you have, you can't always have it all. I think that is also very important, and something that we try to, even work with schools to help children make that calculated trade-off as much as possible.
Yeah, you're right. When you're talking about mentoring, I just remembered, because I also do mentoring on the side. So like a lot of my the students will ask me, oh, so how much do you get paid as a journalist? And the question is very arbitrary, because I mean, I can say I'm being paid like 10,000 or being paid like 5,000 or 3,000. And the number doesn't really matter, because I think, so I always tell them like, what kind of lifestyle do you want to lead? And then, so if you want to lead like a very minimalist lifestyle, don't want to have kids, nothing, 3,000 a month, I think it's fine. But if you lead a very lavish lifestyle, I think even 10,000 a month is not enough. So it's about understanding yourself at the end of the day. And I think financial well-being essentially boils down to self-awareness and self-knowledge. Because if you don't know yourself, basically, you don't know your habits, you don't know how you behave under certain circumstances, then you will very easily veer off path, no matter how good your financial plan is, I feel. Yeah. So on that note, I mean, we'll just wrap up this session with maybe any last words of advice that you guys have, especially with, all the recent property cooling measures, the mortgage rises. I think everyone's getting a little bit stressed and very anxious. I think, Evie, you've been fielding questions from the bank and all that. And I think underlying all these queries, that people have is basically a fear of uncertainty, and basically fear that they won't be able to lead their current life anymore. So to wrap up this session, maybe you guys can talk about just give any advice on how to manage stress, or maybe manage like limited money, and how do you kind of manage your expenditure? Any advice or takeaway strategies?
Okay, I can start. I think what's important in times of uncertainty is to take stock. If you have an opportunity to be able to take one step back, it's good to take stock. And if you have, as I said, dependents, loved ones, people whom you are financially responsible for, it is also a good, I would say, opportunity to have this conversation. What needs to cut back? What needs to be changed? I used to go to holiday 10 times a day, a month, a year, or whatever, and then now I need to cut back. So the choices that has to be, what are essentials and what are not, and ask ourselves these honest questions. So I think in times of uncertainty, we can think of it as an opportunity to do some of these things that maybe we never had the courage to do before, right? And I think in facing the future, I would say what Fitria said earlier was really very important. Like the thinking of, we didn't talk about it today, but like to harness your own skill sets and your talents to discover what you can do to make more money. It can be, sometimes people realize they were very good traders. We had some of them during the COVID situation. Some people realized they were good bakers, they were good cooks, they could do by the side, selling things that they never ever thought of was possible. So I think that is another thing that, you look into yourself and ask yourself what you are passionate about, what kind of problems you want to solve, and then solve it. And then, try to also get it valued, financially for yourself. That's all.
I think for me, the last few words were basically live within our means. Our means, that living within our means doesn't mean that you have to live just by the basics, but understand what truly is important for us, what truly makes it happy. And of course, understanding that what are the trade-offs that we are making for that basic lifestyle that we are seeking for. All right, I think having that, once we are true to what is basic to us, we will stop getting a bit FOMO. We will stop getting paying for things that maybe didn't really matter to us, but basically for how they make us feel by the society. So that will be mainly about it, because I think in COVID, similar to what Evie shared, I also realized that people tend to just understand themselves more. Maybe I don't need to travel that much. All right, I'm very happy to travel once a year, probably. In the past, when we travel a lot more, right? Some people think that maybe I'm just happier spending more time with my family at home. I don't need to do this much outside. So COVID also gives us some reality check as to what truly matters to us. And that's when we understand what is important to us. We put our money where it is important. And then therefore, regardless of the situation, we will be happy with our decisions that we make, because it is ultimately to make us and our dependents and our loved ones, happier together.
Yeah, that's so true. And on that note, I fully stand by the statement that money can buy happiness, but I think the difficult part is not affording that happiness, but it's about defining that happiness, what it means to you. Because once you're able to define that happiness, and then you're able to kind of plan towards it and decide whether you can afford the definition of happiness that you have. Okay, so thank you so much for all of you for joining us on a Sunday morning to learn a little bit more about your relationship with money. Hopefully we gave you some food for thought on your financial planning journey. And if you have any questions for any of us, just feel free to reach out to us, on our various social media platforms.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Grace, for hosting.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
Fitria.
you.